Are you frozen? Oh, you were just meditating.
Oh, I was just, we just took a deep and cleansing breath to join you all today. So if you haven't taken one yet, please feel free to use this as your reminder to take a deep and cleansing breath.
So needed sometimes.
I love that we have a new team right now that's really great and fabulous and wonderful. And I love that one of our new team members recently showed up to a call and was like, let me just take 1 second to arrive here. And I was like, oh, I'm in love with you.
Oh yeah, that was perfect. They were like, we need a moment.
Yeah. Let me just say, she was like, I've been on calls all day. Let me just take a moment to arrive. And I was like, oh yeah, the alignment is real.
Correct. Yeah. We manifested each other.
Anyway,
10 out of
hello.
10.
Good morning. Good afternoon.
Hi.
Good evening. Hi.
How's everyone doing today? Good?
That's Gabby. I'm Meadow, in case you're new here. We
Hi,
don't
welcome.
really say that. What if people only hear our voices? I wonder what people think we look like when they hear
Don't
our
we have an
voice.
intro that plays before the episode that sounds like our names?
We do, don't we? Yeah, probably. Yeah, I only watch us on YouTube because I think we're cute.
I mean,
it's almost my season. The narcissism's gonna just go up. I'm so sorry in advance.
But you know what? Yes. I want to acknowledge that.
Let's hold space for your narcissism.
Correct. But then also with the YouTube thing, I think listen, whatever floats your boat, guys, but we do have a YouTube. I feel like people don't really know that we publish full video episodes because I get it. If you're at work, like you're not watching a YouTube video, you're just listening to a pod. Feel you. But if you're working from home, you want to put us on your TV screen.
It's fun. We hang out.
No one's mad at that.
No one's mad at it.
I put on makeup for this. So like.
I surely didn't.
Yeah.
But you know what? My nose is less red and now it's in the peeling stage. So we're healing.
Is it really peeling a lot?
Oh yeah, so much. But I have 2 hero products. I was going to post about them. I have this French pharmacy that I don't think anyone knows about product that's incredible that I've been putting on and layering with skin food, like really, really thick. And so it's like doing gorgeously. By the time I see you this weekend, it'll be.
I'm so excited to see you. I'm going to give you your birthday present very early.
I'm so excited. Well, I gave you yours, 4 months late? So that adds up for us. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Can't wait.
Selfishly, I just want you to have it now.
I know, because you want to talk about it. You've told me.
Yeah. And like, who doesn't want like a cheeky little early birthday gift to start celebrating their month?
I'm so excited. I'm so excited. You're going to initiate me into the season.
I hope you like it.
I'm going to hate it.
No, I feel like you will like it. But like, I'm like on the off chance that you don't lie, you know?
Well, first of all, I would never lie. Second of all, I'm going to like anything you give me. Like, you have great taste. We like so much of the same things. Like, I'm going to love it.
Good, because I got myself one too.
That's what I mean. If you like it enough to get it for yourself, I'm gonna want it.
I wanted us to have matching, and you'll understand why.
That.
You'll understand why when I give it to you. It'll make sense.
I also, just to talk about Maddie real quick, because it's going to be our season, I'm making her a painting, and I'm using the poem that I found at the poetry tree that's been on my fridge for fucking weeks. That's like it's called Reincarnation. It's about like who would want to reincarnate as an oyster. So it would really all go together. And I'm going to like write it on the painting.
Maddie is an oyster girl, if anyone's really confused as to why that's the theme of this. Also, watch this be the one episode in her entire life that she listens to. It won't be, but imagine.
There's no way. She's too busy.
No way.
She's working way too hard. Let Maddie Bragg live. Hashtag let Maddie Bragg live.
Hashtag free Maddie Bragg. We'll make merch.
We start commenting that.
She has no idea what's going on because she's not on the internet. There's a whole movement. She doesn't know.
We're leading it. She'd be like, I fucking hate you guys.
Yeah. That's so funny.
Oh, it's too much.
Man. Anyway.
I am very thrilled that I'm talking to you in the morning because we've been doing a lot of afternoon recordings and I very much like to start my day with you.
Oh, that's really nice.
Well, it's also kind of selfish because I saw a TikTok the other day that was about how people that work from home, it was some guy being like, you got to have one more human interaction before you go out in public. Because I'm either getting black cat energy or golden retriever energy. And it's y'all are weird. And I was like, if I don't talk to Gabby multiple times a day before interacting with other human beings, some guy with a Trump hat on tried to say hi to Mahal and I panicked. Like I need my social warm up. You know what I mean?
That's really funny. See, I can't tell. Here's the double-edged sword. Meadow and I have been talking a lot, and I don't know if this is your unpacking maybe it is because we didn't say what
Oh,
our unpacking. Well, I told you mine, but you didn't tell me yours. Meadow and I have been talking a lot about the way we are organizing our calendars.
oh, it's my
And
unpacking.
okay, great. So this will lead into that conversation.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
we've been talking a lot about that. And when you just said I like starting my morning with you, like, yes, love that human interaction. But I will, and the thing is, it's good for the listeners and it's good for me when we do this in the morning because our energy is like more up and we're less distracted.
Yes.
But sometimes those afternoon ones get a little chaotic and they're kind of fun because it's like second coffee
That's
energy, which
true.
is always a little chaotic.
It's like Patreon energy.
Yes. But if I'm
Yeah.
thinking about like my freelancer, I'm my own boss self, morning recordings really do not do it for me because now I'm distracted for the rest of the day. Like it's hard for me to refocus
Oh, interesting.
when I have a light. Like I have to put all the shit away.
Yeah.
And then for some reason my
Yeah.
brain is now like in creator mode. So lately what I've been doing is because we record on the same day of the week every
Yeah.
week, I make that my like content
TMV
creation.
day.
Like no, like I make it like okay, I'm going to look cute. If I
Yeah.
have to film a YouTube video, if I have to film a TikTok, if I have to like edit
Got
anything for
it.
social, if I have to like edit a video, like I make this my like content day.
Okay. Got
And then
it.
obviously if I have deadlines, I'll adjust accordingly because my brain is now like in this.
Well, do you want to switch to afternoon? Because I don't mind. I mean,
No, no, no,
technically,
no. Now it works
okay.
for me since now this is my content day.
Right. That's fair. Also, put on a hat. Remember when we got into the Huberman thing where it said creative energy is in the morning and the afternoon's more
Mm,
analytical? But if you lower your visual ceiling, like putting on a hat, it allows you to focus into those detail-oriented tasks more.
And quite frankly, it is better in the morning because at least I can give myself a moment to refocus, even if I'm just like cleaning up. Because if we do it in the afternoon, usually we won't record later than 3 and then we're done by 4. And then I'm like, well, I guess my day's done because now I really can't focus. I'm like, my day doesn't
Yeah,
need to be ending at
exactly.
4, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Same. Yeah, I totally feel that.
Anyway.
Okay, well, that was a gorgeous transition for me.
Okay, yay.
So thank you for setting me up for that because we've obviously been talking about this a lot offline, but I had some other recent like little mini realizations recently that kind of all contribute to this. So overall, I'm kind of unpacking the balance between intuitive living and being responsible and disciplined, which is kind of like a masculine feminine dynamic, but I digress. So it all started, I had a shower realization the other day
The best kind.
where the best kind, right? They
Mhm.
always come to you in the shower. I was thinking back to how when I was working for NAMI and like corporate nonprofits and 9 to 5, I was so stifled and was like really struggling and like could not focus and hated the schedule. And like I was not doing well. And I remember my mom one time telling me when I was talking to her about it back then, being like, it's just not for me. I can't do this, whatever. She was like, yeah, neither could your dad. Like, my dad came home one day and jumped in the pool with all his clothes on. It was just like floating into oblivion. He was like, I can't do it
That's you.
anymore. Like, exactly. She like always brought that up as an example. And I was like, this is me. It's in my blood. And then I was like, oh, entrepreneurship suits me because it's fucking school. And I crush school. Calls and meetings are classes I have to show up to at a certain time. Everything else is my own workload, up to my own schedule, me to figure out and do what I want and work around and I was like, it's school. It's a school schedule.
And
And I
it's
fucking crush
accountability.
school. And it's accountability. Like
College. It's giving college.
that's what I mean.
Yes.
Yeah, not high school, college. But so that really clicked for me. And I was like, oh, that's kind of fun because I do consider myself a lifelong student. And so much what I do is like also having to keep myself constantly educated about mental health research and yada, yada, yada. So I really liked that comparison. But then, as we kind of mentioned in the beginning, we have a new team. Hello. And I have a new team for consulting. And it's like the
Mhm.
most people I've had to manage in an entrepreneurship yet. Obviously, not as much as when I used to be an actual manager for a nonprofit, but it's like really fun to get back into that because I think we're great leaders, by the way. But I will say, like this whole balance of like really leaning on my intuitive energy and like how I plan things. I remember even at the nonprofit, I had a boss that wanted every single task you were going to do, like the to-do list laid out in the calendar, minute to minute, which one you were going to do and when. And I was like, I cannot, I made it up
That's
every
just
week.
micromanaging. Yeah.
Well, like, she was an insane boss, but I was like, I can't, like, that's not the way my mind works. And like, sometimes we've talked about this a lot. Like, sometimes I feel really creative in the morning, but it's like whether I'm going to write an article for someone else or this project that TMV's working on that requires writing or something else is like up to me and which one I'm like feeling drawn to.
Mhm.
But so I try to batch calls strategically. But I'm just finding the balance between like being intuitive and using my own energy to show up for work in the way that I know I can and like live that day to day, with balancing the responsibilities of like having a lot of people around you that rely on you and like needing to show up for other people and also like be effective.
Mhm.
And so I'm like still playing with that duality, but I think, I haven't dove much deeper into human design since we
Mm.
did that for the first time in that previous episode. But I will say, as a manifesting generator, like I have my hands in like a lot of different things, and that really suits me. And I really need to have it's the same way I approach, sorry, I'm jumping all over the place today. It's the same way I approach my morning routine. Like I have a set list of things I like to do in the
Mhm.
morning. Each morning looks a little bit different because I
Yeah.
just show up and meet myself where I'm at and do different stuff. But so December, like the balance between those two, and granted, it's still new for us, right? This is like a new
Mhm.
chapter of thoughts may vary internally. And so I'm still writing that balance.
Talking to the mic, babe.
I'm still writing that balance. But it's just interesting. It's interesting to play with, and it's interesting to realize the way I show up in masculine and feminine energies in my like creativity process and creating process, because so much of our tasks are creative too.
Mhm.
I don't know. It's been a learning curve for me at this
Yeah.
point in time. And so that's kind of what I'm unpacking and rolling with.
I think that's so real and something that I'm sure everyone listening can relate to on some level. And also, to give you credit, you've been a lot more receptive to changing in
Oh,
that
thank you.
way,
I'm
which is,
trying to be,
yeah, which
because
is
it's not
good.
natural for me, which you
Feel,
know.
no, I feel you because I'm the same way. I'm like, you tell me what to do. I don't react that well to that. I like telling people what to do, but I don't like you telling me what to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Unless it's very specific things. Cause like then I loved being an assistant. Like I really liked that
Right.
because there's a
Right.
certain part that you can like, you're obviously always thinking because you're thinking ahead and trying to stay like a step in front of your boss to be proactive, but you can also kind of turn your brain off a little bit because you don't have to
Mhm.
like they're just throwing things at you. So your prioritization brain needs to be turned on, but everything else is like someone's telling you what to do all the time. You know what I
Right. The
mean?
execution is a little easier. Yeah.
But yes,
I
you
can't wait
you
for you
have
to hire
been.
our assistants.
Oh God, I can't wait to interview them. I, which by the way, tell me if anyone thinks this is interesting. I really want to make a TikTok series about like how to be the best intern
No,
slash
you
assistant
need to. You
because I was
need
a
to
really
do
fucking good
that.
intern and I was a really fucking good assistant.
Yeah, and people need those lessons. And what do you always say? Those skills are transferable. I would love to see that from you as a consumer of
Like if
your
I could just
content.
duplicate me for an
Yeah.
assistant. My mom tells
Yes.
me that all the time. She's like, I wish I could duplicate you. And I'm like,
Yeah. I do
yeah.
too, quite frankly.
Yeah. But then I get like jealous. Like when I left my old job, my boss, her assistant now, who I recently met, she's fucking great. And she's another Latina, which like j'adore. And
Yeah.
she's so great. And I remember I went to New York and I was seeing my old boss and I met her new assistant. And then like we closed the door and my boss was like, she's just like you. And I was like, yes.
You're
Like
like,
part of me was so happy.
that's
The part of
exactly
me
what I
was
want
like
to
so
hear.
jealous where I was like, but is she better? Like what's going on?
Oh
But
my God.
yes, this is really real, and I'm glad you brought it up to the people. And you are doing a good job. Do you want to like share a
Thank
little
you.
bit about things that you're doing that you feel? I mean, you shared a little bit of like batching calls, which we talked. Lauren from the Skinny Confidential, we heard talk about that on her TikTok of how she like batches all of her
Yeah.
calls,
Smart.
so that her brain doesn't need to be switching back and forth, which I thought was really smart and like obvious advice that I was like, why the fuck did I not? Was I not
Right.
doing that? I know we were trying
Right.
to a little bit, but like now I'm being a lot more rigid about it.
Absolutely. I'd say it's a little bit more unique and nuanced for me because like the way I show up for consulting calls and like TMV calls is
Mhm.
so different than coaching calls.
Mhm.
And like part of my job really requires me to be grounded and centered and like leave all my shit at the door and show up really authentically and be a mirror to someone else. And in order for me to do that, I have to do like a lot of self-care things. And I try to do a lot of prep before going into those calls to
Mhm.
be as intentional and grounded and sacred as a container as possible. So I think that's also the other piece that gets a little tricky is like,
Mm.
I love having in a job that uses my own like spirituality and self-care as an excuse. Like I have to do it in order to perform for a job,
Mhm.
and that's really cool for me. I love that excuse because that's everything I'm into and what I like to
Yeah.
study and be a part of anyway. But I will say like having that be also included in like the 9 to 5 that gets a little tricky to kind of compartmentalize that. Or like if I'm on calls all day and then I have an hour and a half to like eat lunch and then also get grounded before going into coaching, it just like requires a really big shift in me. So I think I'm still experimenting with what ways I can move things around, what days can I show up for certain things at certain times, like where do I still need to be intuitive, like what new practices can I implement to kind of like bring me into those switches. You know how you were talking about going to therapy and how it's so nice to drive and have that space
Mhm.
in between?
Mhm.
Like I'm trying to come up with my own practices and rituals, like whether it's making a tea and being like super grounded, taking deep breaths, watching the way I swirl the water into it.
Mhm.
Like I'm just trying to put a lot of intention into these little breaks in between this version of me and that version of me and the who needs to show up for what task.
No, I love that.
I'm still kind of playing with it. But if anyone has any tips for how they do that, I would love to hear.
I think also just by the nature of working from home, because I know that the days that you have coaching, you need to give yourself like 30, you've told me like a 30-minute cushion on either end type of
Yeah,
thing.
absolutely. Yeah.
And so I feel like but because we work from home, it's like we have to think about what we're gonna have for lunch every day, which you have to do everywhere, obviously.
Exactly.
But it's like now you gotta cook, now you gotta clean. So I wonder if like you thinking about that in advance and like meal prepping lunches.
There's like a really organic bougie meal delivery service that I want so badly.
Mm,
And I'm like, it's not that much money. If I'm buying food out a lot already, like might as well just do it because it's going to make me so much more productive during the day.
when I was at a job, like I would go pick up lunch and I'd eat at my
Right.
desk.
I also don't have a dishwasher. Like literally making a lunch and cleaning up alone.
Do you have to clean up after lunch or can you just leave the dish? Can you just run
No,
some water on
I
it and
I
then do it
do.
at night?
I do. But still, even like, I don't know. I've complained about this before. How are people knowing how to wash their hairbrushes and like do their laundry and do your dishes if you don't have a dishwasher and show up to your 9 to 5? There's work out, walk your dog. There's a lot to do in a day.
There is a lot to do in the day.
There's a lot to do in a day. That's
But we
why I
can
like
do
kind of
it.
being flexible with it. Oh, we can totally do
We can do it.
it.
No. Yeah. I've started to give myself, by the way, like the laundry and all of that Sunday to Sunday, babe.
But anyway, I will say in this process of like learning the intuitive dance and the balance and like discipline and organization versus intuition and creativity, I will say I'm being really, thank you for telling me I'm being open. I think I am being very open and receptive. I think I'm being experimental. I'm trying to be a good team player. And I'm like giving myself grace while I figure it out.
We're all learning.
That's that. What are you unpacking?
I was really thrilled because I posted a video as like it was like a response to Becky G did an interview with Jay Shetty. Love both of
Yes.
them. And
Yes.
Becky had posted a clip talking about the ni de aquí, ni de allá, not from here, not from
Mhm.
there narrative, and this sort of 200% experience of
Mhm.
why do I need to be 50%? She's talking in her case like 50% Mexican, 50% American. Like, why can't I just have 100% of both my cultures and like just move
Mhm.
that way? Like, why do I need to piece myself apart to satisfy anybody else?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I've heard her talk about this before, and it's why I'm such a fan. One of the reasons I'm such a fan of her, because she had a lot of fucking resistance when she moved from singing in English to singing in Spanish. Like it was a big fucking deal, and people
Mm.
were not thrilled about it. And
Wow.
forget about like the machismo within the industry that are like in the Latin industry of like women don't sell tickets, women like can't sell records, like you have to be like just showing your body and like that's what's going to sell. And then couple that with like the Latin community not being receptive and being like, she's a gringa, she's not even like, she wasn't even born in
Mm.
Mexico, like this chick's from America, like her Spanish isn't perfect, like fuck that. And so I've always like kept up with her having these conversations. And so I heard this clip that she did and I immediately was like filming a TikTok because I related to it and I knew that
Let
like,
me in, coach.
yeah, I'm like, I know obviously like I'm not the only person that feels this way. And I was just really
Mhm.
happy at the reception of it in terms of not feeling like half of it you're happy because you're like, oh, I'm glad I'm not the only one. So like glad it
Mhm.
resonated with people. But then also I'm like, fuck, it sucks that like that many people
This is such a
feel.
ubiquitous experience. Yeah.
hmm
Yeah.
And a lot of people messaged me and were like, please talk about it on the podcast. And it's something that I have wanted to talk about. And like I've told Meadow and she totally agrees. Like I definitely want to have other guests on where we can like share this experience more because
Yeah.
this isn't like a Latin thing. This is anyone who has
Yes.
like multiple, I guess, like identities to them, or
Yeah.
any child of any immigrant. Like it's not
Mhm.
unique just to my Cuban American experience. But yeah, the conversation that I was just having and that I think so much about was just how loud that narrative was and continues to be of
Mhm.
not from here, not from there, and how out of place it can make you feel. And I know that like I
Mhm.
personally just felt that so much. And growing up in a city like Miami, where, first of all, like you're surrounded by Latins.
Mhm.
And while that's like so beautiful to see yourself, even if like at the time we weren't being represented in media, like at least I could like look around and see myself around people because
Mhm.
there's just so many Cubans in particular. But it was just really loud. And I'm like, where do I want to even start with this? Because there's so much there, and now I feel like I'm being flooded with like so many random memories. I feel like Raven having a fucking vision. But I guess I'll start with like what I was talking about in the video of just like aside from like the older generation of like, you know, how the parents were, which I'll talk about in a second, but like just from my peers and my generation, I always felt like, and this wasn't necessarily from the Cubans, this was from the other Hispanics and Latins that like I grew up around, particularly the ones that weren't from Caribbean places, like
Mm.
whether they weren't Dominican, they weren't Puerto Rican, they weren't Cuban. And the sort of like elitism that came with that. And there's just like such a stigma around the way that Caribbean Latins speak Spanish
Mm.
and how it's like not classy and it's not educated and the accent is like trashy and you're just seen as like trash. And I remember growing up being in Spanish class with a lot of these kids, those kids that weren't Caribbean, their parents like only spoke to them in Spanish and they spoke perfect Spanish.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
they would just like we were all in the same like AP Spanish class, but they would just like shit on the way that I spoke Spanish because like not only was my Spanish not as good as theirs, when I like I'm talking like people would like laugh in class like if I had to like read a passage or
Mm.
like whatever and shit on me being like, you don't speak Spanish. Like the amount of times that I heard that of like, you don't speak
Mm.
Spanish, slash then being like, well, you're just like a fucking guanasa with like your accent. That like, because I had an accent that like wasn't exactly like theirs, my Spanish was automatically trash. So it's like you have that side, but then you also are like, so then you're trying to like assimilate to have a very neutral accent. Like if you talk to my parents, like neither of them sound really Cuban. Like my mom, unless she's around her family, and even then she sounds way more Puerto Rican because she left Cuba when she was five
Mhm.
months. But
Mhm.
like it's only when she's around her family. So it's like then you think about the older generation of like what that must have been like for my parents coming to a country that's not their home and being like, you need to whitewash yourself and assimilate as fucking quickly as
Mhm.
possible if you want to be successful. And then
Mhm.
couple that with just like my mom being a woman in the workplace, like a woman in business, that was like doubled. So like it wasn't
Mhm.
until I was out of college, living in New York, and really trying to like call in Latin friends that didn't make me feel shitty, quite frankly.
Mhm.
And it was
Mhm.
those people that were the first ones to tell me, of course, you don't fucking speak perfect Spanish. You grew up in America. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? Your
Mhm.
parents, like, were like speaking to you in English. Like, yeah, even though my parents spoke to me in
Mhm.
Spanish, they didn't force me to speak to them in Spanish back. Like, I spoke to my
Mhm.
family and some of my family members in Spanish. And like, you're in Miami, so you're just speaking in Spanish to people in general. But like, of course my parents didn't want me to have an accent
Mhm.
because then like people would know. Like you're found
Mhm.
out. So it's like be
Mhm.
that, but like then you still need to be Latina. And then like
Mhm.
so you have people in this country telling you like, no, you're Latin. Trust me,
Mhm.
you're Latin. And then you have people like on the Latin side being like, oh, you're just a gringa. Like you're
It's
not.
so isolating.
Like you're not even
Yeah.
from there.
Yeah.
And then like and then it just shifts too, right? Like that was happening there. And then I remember I went to college and I was put in a space where I wasn't in Miami anymore.
Mhm.
I wouldn't talk to any of the kids that were from I had went to school with a lot of South Americans. I wouldn't talk to any of them in Spanish. I was like scared to be friends with them because I was like embarrassed to
Oh.
speak Spanish around them because of just that narrative that I had heard that they
Yeah.
then reinforced. So then I'm friends with
Mhm.
all these American kids and then I'm now to them like this token
Yep.
hot
Yeah.
like spicy Latina
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
where it's
Yeah.
only convenient for me to be that when they are playing Bad Bunny at a club or
Right.
they're like think it's hot or like want you
Mhm.
to like talk like this and act a certain way and like,
Mhm.
you know, have like more meat on your body because you're Latina and they can grab like
Mhm.
whatever the fuck it was. But then it's like, no, we can't actually date you
Mhm.
because like the parents won't like you're not from our culture.
We just get to exploit you and make you our fantasy.
Then in the Latin group, it's like, well, I can't date you either because I can't speak perfect Spanish and your parents aren't going to like me
Mm.
because your parents live in South America and like
Mhm.
they're
Mhm.
not going to like that. So it was always this, it just like left me always feeling really like, where the fuck do I
Do I fit
belong?
in?
And
Yeah.
even now, like in my career, there are so many things that I've wanted to do with the Latin community. And I feel, and I've never said this out loud, but like I feel
Mhm.
like I've fallen short with like giving back to my community and like and holding and creating spaces for my community. And like that's literally making me emotional talk about it because like
Mm.
it means so much to me to be part of this community, but I
Mhm.
almost feel like I can't represent it properly. And I feel like I can't
Mm.
like it scares me from like wanting to give interviews in Spanish or like
Mhm.
reach out to certain, you know, celebrities that I want to interview, but I'm like, fuck, I can't give can I give the full interview in Spanish? Like, are they going to feel comfortable talking to me? Like, it makes me stop myself and double, like, just like do a double take on
Mm.
even just like work stuff and even forget
Mhm.
about work stuff, just like giving back to my community in a way, because I feel like
Mhm.
who am I to be able to like give back to my community when like it's like I don't even know where I fit, you know?
Mhm. Yeah.
It's really weird and like I know I'm not the only one because like you guys sent me such
Mhm.
sweet DMs and like asking me to talk about this. I don't know. It's a really shitty, weird feeling when you
Mhm.
feel like you have to give pieces of yourself rather than
Mhm.
be able to just show up as like your whole self and that be
Mhm.
fine.
First of all, thank you so much for sharing because like you said, like this is a very, very ubiquitous experience.
Yeah.
Like this is not I know so many of our listeners actually have like a similar background to you, so like that specific narrative, but also like I grew up with a sister who was mixed that
Mhm.
explained this to me my whole childhood. Granted,
Mhm.
it's different. It was black community and a white community and she was adopted into a white family and then I have my fiance talk about how like he obviously is mixed as well and then even like coming from the south to here and like the
Mhm.
southern accent versus a California accent like
Mhm.
whichever way you want to pick up and drop people into these different buckets, like it's such a common experience.
Yeah.
And I'm really hoping, you know, my favorite joke from Broad City is like, oh, you know, by the next generation, everyone's going to be caramel and queer. Like, I'm really hoping that like that kind of helps allow people to show up as their full,
Yeah.
unique, authentic selves. Cause like, how much more interesting is that to bring so much, like every different piece of you and merge pieces
Mhm.
together? And I think while I can't, obviously, I'm just a white woman that can't relate to that experience. When you were speaking, I found myself like also feeling emotional because that's how I feel about being queer.
Yes. And that's not something that we've talked
I
a lot about on here.
No, and it's bi awareness week, which I don't even call myself bi, but
Mhm.
it's that similar experience of like, oh, if you're bi, the queer community thinks like you don't really
Mhm.
count and you're not a part of it, but then all the straight people think you're not really gay, or if you're a man, you're just gay, you're not even bi, or like the way that kind of
Mhm.
experience fits in. So I feel very similarly to you and like not being able to like fully lean in or show
Mhm.
up or express within that community or ride for the community in the way that
Yeah.
you really want to and feel your identity as a
Yeah.
part of it.
Yeah.
So
That's
that
so
piece of it,
true.
I feel deeply in my heart.
That's what I'm saying. Like,
And
this isn't a unique
yeah.
experience to like one community. This is
Yeah.
for anybody
Yeah.
who feels like they live at the intersection of anything.
Yeah. Absolutely. What have been some of the ways, because I know you obviously have like reconciled this deeply personally. I'm not saying anything is done or healed or finished, but I know like versus you in college and high school, Gabby, versus now, I have done a lot of reconciliation with your whole unique self. What are
Mhm.
some of the things that helped you get to that perspective or like show up as your whole unique self, at least in like our friendships? I
Mhm.
think in your friendships right now,
Yeah.
you've called in more Latin friends. I know you still separate some of that, but I do think you like honor that a lot more than I heard that you have in the past. So I'd love to hear
Yeah.
how you got there.
I mean, what's so funny is like the fact that I was even like having to call in Latin friends when growing up in a city like Miami is
I
just
know.
because it was just like a different thing. Like
Yeah.
I grew up around like a lot of the older generation, obviously, like I said earlier, is like they're just trying to assimilate. and they want their kids to fit in and to assimilate and like for them not to feel othered.
Because it was survival.
And so I grew up with a lot of that. So it's like I also like I went to private school, which was also a whole other thing too. So like there was a different part of Miami that like I wasn't a part of either. And like whether that's the nature of I don't think it's like anyone's fault. Do you know what I mean? Like I was a fucking kid growing up there. And now hindsight's 2020. And like even like when Meadow and Maddie came to stay with me in Miami, like I did so many things that I didn't do when I was growing up that now as an adult, I recognize as like, oh my God, look at all the beautiful things that my city has to offer that I wasn't like, not that I wasn't exposed to, but like, just like I wasn't doing. Like, you know, even the other day I was with Zoe at a friend, like one of his friends' engagement parties. And we were talking to a friend of his who grew up in Miami, or he like kind of grew up in Miami, but his family is from there. And he's also half Cuban. And we were talking and I was like trying to, and his family is from a part of Miami that is like the largest Cuban population in Miami. And we were talking and I was like, oh my God, and did you do this? And did you go here? And he was just like, we had a very different experience. And I was like, yeah, true, fair.
Probably, yeah.
So I grew up with a type of like Latinidad where it was like this very like, we call it like a niña fina mentality, which is like, I'm like trying to like, how do I say it? It's like an elegant little girl, like the Latin version of going to like, not etiquette school. What's it called? Like your cotillion?
Cotillion, yeah.
Like that energy of like,
absolutely.
You're a virgin. You're wearing your pearl earrings. You don't curse. You speak good, clear Spanish. And like your hair is always brushed and straight. And like, niña fina. And that is really what I was exposed to growing up. And I remember I would always tell my sister and I always say, I'm like, my favorite version of mom is when she comes back from Puerto Rico and when she spends time with her sister.
We've talked about this.
And like, I'm super close with that side of my family because they're kind of the only ones in my family that like, and look, the older generation of that side, like still has their thing. But like my cousins and shit, it's like, they're kind of the only ones in my family that like relaxed into like their actual culture. So when I left, to answer your question, like when I was calling in Latin friends, it was like a very specific feeling. You know that I'm like an emotional manifester. And like for me, it was a feeling. And I just wanted to find people that allowed me to embrace like the beautiful lightness of my culture and like the play in my culture and the fun in my culture, because we are the funnest fucking people in town. And like ones that are gonna go out with me and like fucking bend over in a club and like shake our ass all night and like be sober, by the way. And like let me speak in my fucked up Spanish and like bring out a little bit of a Cuban accent and like dress, you know, with like my stomach out and like my curves out. And so the ones that I became friends with, it was like I really was just calling that in. And it was those people that said to me what I said earlier. And they really helped heal that because they allowed me to like lean in and just like chill into who I am actually and like the things that bring me joy. And like I wasn't as afraid to like practice my Spanish with them, and I would like learn new phrases and like pick up those phrases and feel like I could just like have fun. And then even that like opened up the whole door of like leaning into like my sensuality, because it is like Caribbean Latin culture is like, I just think of like the humidity and like the heat and you're just sweating and like, it's like, you know, it's like how hot did you feel when you were in Miami, you know?
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah.
And just like leaning into that
and emotionally.
And literally. So just like leaning in, that was really healing for me. And I think a really, really big part of me, and I've said this before to my mom and my sister, sorry if you guys are listening, and like they've both kind of looked at me like I'm drama when I say this, but I still haven't been to Cuba. And I feel like that will be a really healing part for me. And there's many reasons why I've been waiting to be able to go with my mom. And there's like reasons why like she hasn't gone back, obviously. And like I can't put that pressure on her. I feel like because I've never been there and I grew up across the street from Cuba, literally like fucking 90 miles away.
Yeah.
It makes me feel like I have like there's a giant hole and like question mark over like where I'm from. And I have a little bit of fear about going too, because I'm like, will I feel accepted there? I've heard from people who have gone that like are Cuban, but like Cuban American and like grew up in America, that like it is just such a welcoming, like everything we like hope and dream that we like
Mm.
hear about our culture of just being very welcoming, and that to like Cubans of other generations.
Mhm.
This giant piece of me that just feels really confused. And it's funny because like my sister, who's older than me, speaks better Spanish, like way better Spanish than I do.
Mhm.
And my mom has always
Mhm.
been like, it's so funny that she speaks better Spanish, but like you're more Latina,
Oh,
because
yeah.
and not to take that away from my sister whatsoever,
No,
but
no, no,
like
no.
it's so fucking important to me. Like this culture,
Yeah.
all I listen to is fucking Spanish
Right.
music. Like
Right.
it is just so, I always knew that I was gonna like either end up with someone who has Latin in them, or like end up with someone who had that intersectionality that could understand this.
Yeah.
Because it's really fucking hard to talk to people who don't get it, because you feel like you're
Right.
just being a weenie about everything.
You're not a weenie hut, Junior. It's so valid and so real.
Thanks.
I wonder if when you were speaking about like hearing that Cuba is exactly what you want it to be in that welcoming culture, I'm reminded of when Aaron went to the Philippines for the first time and he talks
Mm.
about like going out deep
Mm-hmm.
into the jungle in the province and everyone like crying and being like, oh, the son of Ricardo is home and like
Yeah.
that welcoming nature. I wonder if this sort of like hierarchical, you're not in this group, you're not in that group. Like, do you
Mm.
feel, I know it is a ubiquitous experience. Do you feel like it's compounded in America? Like, do you feel like it's because when people go back to those, like thinking
Mm.
about you returning to Cuba or him returning to the Philippines and that being less of an experience there versus how deep that trauma is here? I wonder if that also adds
What do you
like a
mean compounded
layer.
here? Like, do you feel like it's just really like loud here?
Yeah, maybe that's the way to say it. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I think because like America is the land of assimilation.
Right.
So I think Jay said something on that podcast that really resonated, where he was like, you spend your entire life being told to fit in, stand in line, do as you're told,
Mm-hmm.
don't stand
Mm-hmm.
out, like don't be a
Mm-hmm.
problem. But then when you get older, the entire narrative is about how are you different? How are you unique?
Exactly.
What skills do you
Exactly.
bring to the table? How are
Exactly.
you going to brand yourself? And you're like, what the fuck? I've
Yeah.
spent my entire
Life
adolescence,
trying to fit
childhood,
in.
and like young adulthood
Yeah.
just trying to fit in. What do you mean,
Yeah.
who am I? I'm exactly what you
Right.
wanted me to be. I have
Right.
no idea.
Yeah.
Like that question is one of the hardest questions in the fucking world to answer.
Absolutely.
And so, yeah, I feel like it is loud here.
I think the America thing also adds pressure because the way that like racism has gone down in this country
Mhm.
and everyone, I've heard a TikTok about this recently, and I do think this is a whole separate convo. So everyone just like bear with me as I barely glance over it. But like the way that like racism has come into play here and the way that people are either like white, black, this, other, like everyone that's Latin is just Mexican if you're in California. Like the way that people like kind
Oh
of
yeah.
blanket all these cultures together. But then even in white people, the way that like they have erased any sort of connection because we're not from here, right? Let's be
Mhm.
abundantly clear. But the way they've erased any sort of like connection or narrative to what countries you come from and any culture that they had and just called you white, like that internalization and jealousy of the no understanding of culture or where you come from and
Mhm.
how that's like embedded into the racist practice and the
Mhm.
hierarchical standards within white people, within clearly Latin people, within like it just all that's what it does feel
Mhm.
very, very, very loud here, which not
Yeah.
to say this isn't happening everywhere, but just
But
from
this is
my
the
friends
country
that
we live
have an
in.
intersectional
Mhm.
experience like you do in the country you live in, like, holy fucking shit.
Two things just came up for me because
Everyone.
I mean, I just think America is unique in the fact that like none of us are fucking from here, and you can't have that
No,
conversation
yeah,
without
unless you're indigenous.
acknowledging. That's what I was saying. Like you're
Right.
not you can't have that conversation without acknowledging the fact that it's like this country where like white men rule who are
Mhm.
not even from here and do
Yeah.
everything, again, just the land of fucking assimilation, but assimilation to who? Because we're not assimilating to
Mhm.
the ones that were actually from
Mhm.
here, and the land that we
Mhm.
robbed, and the people that we
Mhm.
destroyed, and the communities that we
Mhm.
ignore.
Mhm.
Because like we don't acknowledge any of that.
Oh, no.
That's not who we're assimilating to
Yeah. But it's
whatsoever.
even interesting because people that have the intersectionality, like Aaron is
Hmm.
Black, Filipino, and Native American, but
Hmm.
that like the Native American side is the side he lost most of. And I
Hmm.
feel like the Black and Asian side was something that always was like too Black for the Asians, too Asian for the Black, whatever. But even
Yeah.
that Native American piece was like, that's not even like explored, or I don't know what
Hmm.
hit like the connection to that community too. It, like you're saying, like it's just all,
No, it is. And then the other thing that came up for
it's
me
all
too is
fucked.
like, I also feel like because you know that you and I love accountability and like love putting a caveat on everything. But it's like, I
Oh,
feel
yeah.
like I can't have this conversation without also acknowledging the fact that I'm like super fucking white passing. And like nobody
Right.
knows that I'm
We have talked
Cuban
about this.
until I
Yeah.
open my mouth. And so like
Right.
this experience that I'm speaking of is like, I can't even a fucking fraction of the
Right.
experience that people who are brown and
Mhm.
black have had to experience. Because
Right.
like they're being marginalized in a way that like I've never experienced.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
like that is a fucking ridiculous unfair privilege.
Mhm.
And also has then been like tokenized in such a weird way too, where it was
Yeah.
always like
Yeah.
I was given certain opportunities at work because
Mhm.
they wanted a Latina, but they want a digestible Latina.
Right.
And who's a digestible Latina with light eyes, light skin, and
Mhm.
hair that's easily straightened?
Oh, Aaron was always the one that talked to the cops because they gave him so many lessons to beat the fucking Southern black accent out of him that he was so elegant that like of the friend group, whenever shit went down, like Aaron's the one you present because you can't figure out who he is and he can speak. It's the same fucking narrative.
That is that again, like this is just the fucking tip of the iceberg with this conversation, but just
Of
like the
course. Of
racism within the
course.
Latin community against our own
Yeah.
people and
Yeah.
the way that Afro Latinos are just marginalized even more and how
Yeah.
that develops within our communities. And then you look at somebody like Zoe, who's half Mexican, half black,
Mhm.
and has
Mhm.
Native American in him. And it's like
Mhm.
he has a side of his family. Like, I mean, I'm not gonna speak for his family at all, but like it's just like you see that a lot in those communities of like just such intense racism
Mhm.
just against like your own fucking people.
No, it's the hierarchies within these groups as well. Exactly.
Yeah, it's so multi-layered and it's
Yes.
so I just don't want to diminish the conversation by like watering it down to like our 30-minute discussion because there is just so
No,
much
we're not. We're
more
just
to be had. Yeah, like just
starting
for
a
people
conversation. Yeah.
exactly. Like there's so many pockets that we could like go into to
Right.
like
Right. Right.
talk
Of
about
course.
forever.
Yeah. Could be the entire podcast theme,
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to like present the combo. I know we've talked about it before briefly, but I'd even be lying to you if I say that sometimes like I actively choose not to talk about it on the podcast.
Oh, you said did you not immediately say to me, we don't talk about the queer thing for me?
Yeah.
Like that, and the only way I can relate to this conversation, obviously, considering
Mhm.
my privilege in this department, but like that intersectionality and that push pull is
Mhm.
like really, really touchy and personal to speak on. And like the pushback you can feel from any and all sides is
Mhm.
like hard to want to subject yourself to, frankly,
Yeah.
and open up the door. That's why I'm like so grateful that because I know we've talked about it before. I think if it was like season one, we unpacked this a little bit. I know we talked about in Teffy's episode a little bit, but like you and I have this conversation a lot more offline than online. And
Mhm.
I think it's like really beautiful and cool and brave of you to bring that conversation in this space.
Thanks.
And we need it. Like you're going to make so many people feel so seen.
I mean, even just like, bro, like the reason that Matt and I talk about this all the time, like you guys know the reason why we started this podcast is to make people feel less
Right.
alone, seen, heard, validate, all that. But like the perspective that I bring is also being raised in a Latin community that like doesn't fucking believe in mental health. And like
Right. Right.
believes that like you're fucking depressed because you didn't clean your room and you didn't fucking do the dishes. And like shut the
Yeah.
fuck up because
Yeah.
you didn't have to immigrate to this country. So like your problems don't
Good
matter.
morning. I saved you.
Quite literally.
That TikTok.
Like
Yeah.
literally. And that is like something that I just cannot ignore. And like the DMs that I get from like our Latin listeners and the ones that like follow me and like like I feel like I have not done my like duty enough in that department. And as much
Okay.
as you and I have those conversations offline, like I think I just expressed to you guys like sort of where that fear kind of comes from of feeling like I can't.
Mm-hmm.
But like it's like really all I want to fucking do. Like it really is.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Mm-hmm.
it's just
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I just think they're not that I am like the fucking voice of anything, but if I can make like one person
Right.
and the way that Becky put it in the interview was like bring fucking one brick to like add to the bridge, like
Right.
I'm
Right.
happy. I'm happy.
Yeah. I do just want to reframe. You're not doing your part or showing up for your community. You're learning the ways in which you can feel empowered to do that and actually bring value and tools and a good brick to this bridge.
Mm,
So just because you haven't
thanks.
leaned into how much you want to do that yet, that doesn't mean you're not showing up.
Yeah. Thank you. Also,
Feel
like,
that.
if anybody fucking listening, well, I know the answer. I just need to like call my family more. But like my grandparents, no, because I was gonna listen to what I was gonna say. Cause I was like,
Okay.
the people that I spoke the most Spanish to in my family were my grandparents, and they're all dead. So like I can't call them. But
Yeah.
like I'm
You
like,
said that like me.
who?
They're
Yeah,
all dead.
they're all dead. But like I've tried to like go on like Duolingo, and maybe I just haven't beat as many levels because I haven't tried. But I'm like, what is other than just like having fucking conversations with people in my family? Because guys, some of them still make fun of me, okay? Like I don't know if I want to always talk to them about this. But I'm
Yeah.
like, I want my Spanish to get so much better because, like, guys, I'm
Yeah.
acting as if I don't speak any Spanish. My conversational Spanish is perfectly fine. I completely get through.
Of course.
Like, I'm fine.
Right.
But like, I want to be able to like present my
Conduct an interview.
I want to like conduct a
Start
full
to
interview
finish.
in Spanish, start to finish.
Yeah.
I want to like have like a pitch presentation for like
Right.
investors in Spanish. Like that is the level I'm trying to get to. And so if
Absolutely.
anybody knows any like apps that they really like or any tips and tricks, everyone's gonna be like, again, call your fucking family, you idiot. But like,
Right.
because conversation is just the way you do it. But
My brother said he had a Babbel login and he was going to give it to me, but he never did. So maybe I'll berate him for it and then we could use it.
yeah, because like I go on Duolingo and maybe I just haven't beat the levels, but it's like,
Are you too young to grow up with Muzzy?
I don't know what that is.
Oh man, it was like in the 90s. It was this video that I used to watch and they had it in like Spanish and French and whatever. And it was like this, it wasn't like a Barney, but it was like this fake character thing that would like, they'd have the same episode in different languages. And it's like how you taught little kids languages. In
Well, that's the
90s,
best way.
Muzzy.
The best.
Anyone
Like,
remember,
honestly,
shout out.
conversation, listening to Spanish music and
Right.
watching shows in Spanish. Like my Spanish has gotten so much better just because all I fucking listen to is Latin music. And I'm not watching any shows in Spanish right now, but like over the pandemic, I was watching a lot of TV in Spanish.
Cool.
That was really helpful. So like that is the best way. So I just kind of answered my own question. Anyway, we gotta go.
We really gotta go. But thank you so much for this unpacking. Let's continue to unpack it. Let's continue to not be afraid to show up and only speak to 2 or 3 pockets and know that that barely scratches the surface of the conversation. And yet they're still worth having.
Thank you for having the convo with me. And we really, whenever you
thank
feel
you for
ready,
letting me because I can't relate as much.
No, but you
so
can
thank you
because
for letting me hold that space.
Thank you. Like I know you can't relate in the Latin capacity, but like I would love when you feel ready because it is a conversation we've had offline about like unpacking the intersectionality
the
of
queer
your
side
queerness.
of it. Yeah. We could do it next time.
I'm sure a lot of fucking people relate to that too. I love you.
Anyway, we love you all.
Thank you guys for listening.
Ciao with a CH.
Yeah, fucking these bitches, when I became friends with them, I would text them ciao, goodbye. And they'd be like,
I was like, it's spelled with an I. It's spelled with an I, not an H.
I'm like,
white
they're
bitches.
just
I know.
fucking rude.
Yeah.
Conquerors. All right, I love you.
How's it going, y'all? It's Aaron. Don't let your Monday suck. Don't have those Sunday scaries. I'm tired of everybody waking up in the week saying, shit, it's Monday. You know what goes down? TMV releases every week on Mondays. Make sure you rate and review wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're watching YouTube, yes, TMV has a YouTube. Be sure to subscribe and ring that noti bell and never miss a thing. And also, join the TMV Familia by joining the Thoughts May Vary Patreon and by following at Thoughts May Vary Pod on Instagram and TikTok. Thank you for listening. Great. There you go.
Thanks, AB.
Got y'all.